Okay, so first of all I started off with a dot grid. So the pattern itself wasn't really working for me. I found it a little bit, I suppose a little bit structured, and I didn't like the way it was flowing when I drew it with the straight grid. So in order to find a way to be able to freehand it, I broke it down first of all into a dot grid. So the dots should be, look, they're not perfect when you're doing it by eye, but they should be even squares, okay? Then I'm just going to draw curves, changing directions from one dot to another. Okay, these curves that come in between dots should be at the halfway point. So here, halfway, it's a bit more than, but you get the idea. It's always a little difficult drawing at an odd angle to get it perfect. Okay, and finish this off. Okay, so that's the first part. Now we've got to do the same thing but coming in the other direction. So I'm going to come in here. It's got to come again between that halfway point between the dots. You can see that there's some variation in sizes because my dots aren't perfectly spaced. That's okay, it's just a process. Okay, next row, which is this one. Oops, that's way too small, that one. That one's going to be an odd one. There we go. That'll be a bit of a weird looking one. I also want to finish my outside one. So these are going to be half the design because I haven't got any dots to go to. So just pretend there's a dot there. Okay, and it would go sort of to there. Okay, so these ones I do as like V's. Just guesstimating where they should go to. That one can be a curve. This one's a V. So they should be at about the height of the other curves. You've got to end your pattern somewhere. Okay, so that's the basic structure. I just kicked my tripod. Now to create the petals, I work from the inside. If it's a full one, these circles will have 4 of these lines coming off them, okay? And that will create a complete flower, I suppose, for want of a better word. So you just pull your strokes out from there to the halfway mark where these two curves join. Okay, so from there to the halfway mark. Alright, so that's a completed one. Alright, but even if they're not complete, like this one's just got 3, I can still do them. Otherwise your pattern's going to look odd. Oh, this one does have 4 actually. I'm just going to colour those in because my circles look so horrible. Okay, so just keep going like that. This one's just got 3. Just make sure they touch. Okay, so that's it. That's basically the design without any grid lines. Where the grid would go, if you're finding it hard to visualise, that's where the grid would have been had we drawn the grid. Okay, and those circles would be positioned, where is the next one? those circles would be in the middle of each of those squares. Okay, so that was my first step in the process. My next step to create a little bit more variety in the design so it wasn't so rigid and structured was to actually draw random dots. Now when I draw random dots, I don't work at the top making my way down to the bottom. I actually work all the way around my page so that way I avoid as much as possible having creating patterns without intending to, doing things in lines, because it just seems to be, I know for me and I think for most people, it's something that we just are automatically drawn to. So you might have to, even though it's random, you might have to be actively making it random to avoid patterns and lines happening. Okay, so the other thing to do when you're kind of randomizing it like this is not always going for the most obvious connections. Okay, so I'm going to start off here and I'm going to draw this to that circle there. I also approach this in thinking about the pattern a little bit differently. Now I'm not going to go for the most obvious one, which would be this one. I'm actually going to go for this one. Okay, that's a little bit wonky. If I didn't have such an odd angle, I would prefer to have that as a neater curve. Now the pattern I'm sort of thinking about with this one, this is the completed thing that I'm after, and this is where it's going to be a little bit odd. Having to bring it in here like that. Okay, so that shape is the pattern I'm trying to repeat over and over. Okay, so my next one, so you've got your two curves that touch each other in the middle. This one is now going to form the middle curve of the next one. Okay, and I have to cap the tops across here like that. And this one will come over like that. Now sometimes in randomizing these things you have to maybe add in a dot somewhere to make it, you know, make sense. For this one I'm going to add in one over here because this now becomes one of my middle lines, and I'm going to curve like that, and then I'm going to cap them like that. So you can see by not going for the obvious choice and creating a bit of an awkward one there, I've created a bit of a different shape, you know, which makes it more interesting. Okay, so for my next one, so that's, I need to create, that's like a capped top, so I'm going to create two middle ones here. So one here, and I'll go for this one here. Okay, so they're the two middle ones, that's the capped top, my weird line there, and then there. Okay, so that's it for that part of it. So I've created my basic structure. I find by randomizing those dots I end up with unexpected things because I'm forced to create, you know, some weird lines and things that I wouldn't have done if I'd planned it. So now it's exactly the same thing. We're going to work from the circle to create the petals, but because we're not working with such a structured shape, our petals end up looking a bit different. So they run from the circle to where they touch in the middle, and I'm just going to do them like that. So here's my 4 lines coming off. Each one should have 4 lines off unless it's an outside one, and then to there. Okay, so my next step in randomizing this pattern is to actually, or to do it freehand. With the dots I still had a bit of a structure that I was working towards. I'm again focusing on this shape. As I said, this is what works for me, thinking that this is the shape that I have to create. Okay, so I'll put one up there for a bit of a reference. The great thing about doing it freehand is I can sort of be as exuberant with my shapes as I want, and I don't have to worry about crossing any of those random dots that I might have created in the previous one. I can basically go wherever I want. So I'm just going to do some interesting kind of lines. Okay, so they're my two side pieces. I need to cap them off. The great thing about doing it this way too is I can go really big. I probably could do that with the other ones as well, but yeah, I find it easier doing it like this. Okay, so this top cap forms a side, so my two sides. Alright, so you can see I'm going to fill my page very fast here. I might do one more down here. I also tend to draw, I've missed that a bit, you get the idea. I tend to draw that whole stroke freehand if it's the first one. Alright, so from there I'm just going to do exactly the same thing as I did before, starting from this circle and bringing in my petals to where it joins. Super easy. I tend to do it in one stroke. You know, that's just like the way I like to do it. I think I get a better flow if I continue it, but it doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. Where else? So we probably won't end up with many completed ones on this size. That's a full one, that one's a full one. That's probably the only, or there might be one more. Okay, so there's side ones. And you know, you can take a look back, because you're freehanding it, you can take a step back, have a look and decide whether you need to add more to it to get the look you want. Okay, that's one more completed one. And that's it. That's how I went from turning it into the structured pattern into a freehand design. I hope you enjoyed it. See ya.